Commander Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars shift back to normal as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The quantum fold drive hummed quietly as it powered down. This was only humanity's fifth jump using their new technology, and Jake still felt amazed every time they traveled between star systems in minutes instead of years. Sensors are picking up something big. "Commander," said Chief Engineer Ryan Cole from his station. His voice carried concern. "Really big." Dr. Lisa Thompson looked up from her science console. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had been hoping to find alien life on this mission. But the readings on her screen made her nervous. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple massive objects. They're artificial, ship-sized, but much larger than anything we've ever built." Jake walked over to the main display screen. What he saw made him whistle softly. Dozens of enormous ships floated in space near the fourth planet of the Kepler 442 system. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the horizon. Their hulls gleamed with a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed along their sides. "Sir, we're being scanned," reported Communications Officer Danny Hayes. "Multiple energy sources are locked onto us. These aren't friendly scans. They're targeting scans." Before Jake could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A deep, commanding voice filled the bridge. The words came through their translation computers, which had been programmed with every Earth language but were now working overtime to decode something completely alien. "Primitive vessel. You have entered the territory of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. I am Admiral Vexthor of the Imperial Fleet. You will prepare for boarding and surrender procedures immediately." The main screen flickered and showed the image of the alien speaking. Admiral Vexthor looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. His skin was covered in dark scales that shimmered with colors. Two large eyes stared at them with what Jake recognized as complete confidence. The alien wore elaborate armor covered in metals and symbols. "Your species will submit to Imperial rule according to Galactic Law 447B, Vexthor continued. "You will provide detailed information about your homeworld, your population, your technology, and your resources. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your vessel and your species." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Ryan was shaking his head in disbelief. Lisa was taking notes frantically, excited to be meeting real aliens even under these circumstances. Danny was recording everything for Earth Command. "Admiral Vexthor," Jake said, activating the communication system. "I'm Commander Martinez of the Earthship Horizon. We're explorers, not conquerors. We didn't know this was your territory." "Ignorance is not acceptable," Vexthor replied coldly. "The Zephyrian Empire has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We have conquered and absorbed 847 different species. Your species will be number 848. You have one of your time units to prepare for surrender, or we will demonstrate why resistance is impossible." The alien admiral gestured to someone off-screen. Suddenly, one of the massive Zephyrian ships began to glow. Energy built up along its hull until it released a beam of pure destruction toward a nearby asteroid. The space rock, which had been the size of a small mountain, simply vanished in a flash of light. "Our weapons can destroy planets," Vexthor said matter-of-factly. "Our shields can stop any attack your primitive technology might attempt. Our empire spans 50,000 star systems. We have never been defeated, never been challenged successfully. Your submission is not a request. It is an inevitability." Jake looked at his crew again. Ryan was studying the tactical readings from the weapon demonstration. Lisa was analyzing the energy signatures. Danny was calculating the size of the alien fleet. All of them looked concerned but not afraid. Then something unexpected happened. Jake started to smile. The smile became a grin. The grin became a chuckle. Within seconds, Commander Martinez was laughing out loud. Ryan looked at his commander and started chuckling too. Lisa giggled despite herself. Danny tried to stay professional but couldn't help smiling. Soon the entire bridge crew was laughing. On the main screen, Admiral Vexthor's expression changed from confident authority to confusion. "Explain your response, human. Do you not understand the gravity of your situation?" Jake wiped tears from his eyes and tried to control his laughter. "Oh, we understand perfectly, Admiral. You guys are absolutely adorable." "Adorable." Vexthor's voice rose in pitch. "We are the most feared military force in galactic history." "I'm sure you are," Jake said, still grinning. "Ryan, are you getting good readings on their technology?" "Yes, sir," Ryan replied, his voice still shaking with suppressed laughter. Very interesting stuff. About what we expected for a galaxy that hasn't seen real innovation in a few thousand years. Lisa, what's your assessment of their biological capabilities? Standard oxygen-breathing humanoids, sir. Probably evolved from pack hunters based on their social structure. Nothing we haven't planned for. Jake turned back to the screen where Admiral Vexthor was looking increasingly frustrated and confused. Admiral, thank you for the demonstration. Very impressive. We'll be sure to pass along your message to Earth Command. You will submit now, Vexthor demanded. Your laughter shows disrespect to the Empire. Oh, we're not being disrespectful, Jake said cheerfully. We're just amused. Danny, prepare for jump. Let's head home and let the folks know what we found out here. Sir, jumping to hyperspace in 30 seconds, Danny reported. This is impossible, Vexthor shouted. No species has ever simply left when given an ultimatum by the Empire. You will stay and surrender. Admiral, Jake said as the quantum fold drive began to charge up. We'll get back to you on that whole submission thing. Have a nice day. The UES horizon vanished in a flash of twisted space-time, leaving the Zephyrian fleet floating in empty space. On the flagship, Admiral Vexthor stared at the spot where the human ship had been. Sir? One of his officers said carefully. What are your orders? Vexthor was quiet for a long moment. In 12,000 years of conquest, no species had ever simply laughed at the Empire and left. Something was very wrong with this situation, but he couldn't figure out what. Send a message to Imperial Command, he said finally. Tell them we have encountered a new species called humans. They refused to surrender and showed no fear of our weapons. Request instructions. As the message traveled toward the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, Admiral Vexthor couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just changed in the galaxy. The humans' laughter echoed in his mind, and for the first time in his military career, he felt uncertain about the outcome of a first contact situation. The emergency session in Geneva started exactly 12 hours after the UES Horizon returned to Earth. President Amanda Davis sat at the head of the long table in the Global Defense Council chamber. Around her were the most important military and scientific leaders from every nation on Earth. General Kevin Brooks placed a datapad on the table and looked grim. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. Commander Martinez's encounter with the Zephyrian Empire represents the first hostile alien contact in human history. Dr. Lisa Thompson, who had returned on the horizon, stood up to address the council. The aliens we met control a massive empire. They claim to rule 50,000 star systems and have conquered nearly 1,000 different species, over 12,000 years. Their technology is impressive but not surprising, added Chief Engineer Ryan Cole. Their weapons are powerful. Their ships are large and their shields work well. But everything we saw fits within our projected parameters for a stable galactic civilization. President Davis leaned forward. Explain what you mean by projected parameters. Dr. Paul Wright, head of the Theoretical Warfare Division, activated the room's holographic display. A map of the local galactic region appeared above the table. Madam President, we've been preparing for this scenario for 30 years. Ever since we achieved faster-than-light travel, we knew we might encounter hostile aliens. The display showed red dots spreading across the galaxy. An empire that large and that old has certain characteristics. They rely on intimidation and overwhelming force against weaker opponents. Their technology advances slowly because they have no real competition. Most importantly, they think in terms of controlling planets and star systems. General Brooks nodded. They made several critical mistakes in their assessment of humanity. First, they think Earth is our only significant world. They don't know about our 200 colony systems. Second, continued Director of Stellar Intelligence Helen Foster, they assume our technology level based on a single exploration ship. The Horizon is designed to look harmless and primitive. It worked perfectly. President Davis studied the faces around the table. What exactly are our actual capabilities? Dr. Wright smiled grimly. Madam President, the Zephyrians have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They show up with a big fleet, threaten to destroy planets, and demand surrender. It works because most species develop on single worlds and think defensively. The holographic display changed to show the Sol system, but instead of the normal view of planets and asteroids, it showed a complex web of installations, defensive platforms, and hidden facilities. We don't think defensively, Wright continued. We think in terms of distributed networks, redundant systems, and adaptive responses. Every asteroid in the Sol system has been converted into either a manufacturing facility or a weapons platform. Scout Captain Nicole Barnes, who had been running reconnaissance missions to other star systems, added her report. I've been watching Zephyrian military operations in nearby sectors. Their tactics haven't changed in centuries. They rely on fear and superior numbers. When they encounter resistance, they simply bring more ships until the enemy surrenders. The problem is, said General Brooks, they've never fought anyone like us. Their standard procedure is to threaten the enemy's homeworld until they give up. But we don't have a single homeworld to threaten. Dr. Wright brought up another display showing human settlements scattered across hundreds of light years. Our civilization is completely distributed. We have industrial facilities in 40 different star systems. Our government operates from 12 different worlds. Our military command structure exists in over 100 locations. Even if they destroyed Earth completely, added Director Foster, it would only eliminate about 8% of human population and maybe 3% of our industrial capacity. President Davis was beginning to understand. So when they threaten us with planet-killing weapons, it's like threatening to damage one room in a house that has 10,000 rooms, finished Dr. Wright. Unpleasant, but not strategically significant. Commander Martinez, who had been quiet during most of the briefing, finally spoke up. There's something else, Madam President. When Admiral Vexthor was making his threats, I realized something important. He was trying to scare us. Fear is their primary weapon. But fear only works when you don't understand what you're facing, said General Brooks. We've been preparing for this scenario for decades. We know exactly what kind of empire they're running and exactly how to defeat it. Dr. Paul Wright activated a new display showing complex military formations and battle plans. The Zephyrians sent Admiral Vexthor a report about humans. Based on that report, they'll prepare a standard conquest fleet. Probably 50,000 ships designed to intimidate Earth into surrender. What they don't know, said Director Foster, is that we want them to bring that fleet to Earth. We've spent 30 years turning the Sol system into the most dangerous place in the galaxy for hostile visitors. President Davis looked around the table. Are you telling me we can defeat 50,000 alien warships? Madam President, said General Brooks, we can defeat 50,000 alien warships without losing a single human vessel. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is what we do after we win. Dr. Wright nodded. That's the real issue. The Zephyrian Empire controls nearly 1,000 conquered species. If we simply destroy their military, those species will be free for the first time in centuries. We need to be prepared to help them. Scout Captain Barnes leaned forward. I've been studying the Empire's structure. Most of their subject species never chose to be conquered. They were simply overwhelmed by superior force and have been paying tribute ever since. Many of them have probably forgotten that freedom is even possible, added Dr. Thompson. We're not just facing a military problem. We're looking at the liberation of an entire galaxy. President Davis was quiet for several minutes, absorbing everything she had heard. Finally, she spoke. How long do we have before they arrive? Based on their technology and the distance involved, said Commander Martinez, probably 6 months. 6 months to prepare for the largest military operation in human history, mused the president. And you're confident we can win? General Brooks smiled. Madam President, we're not just confident we can win. We're confident we can win so decisively that every species in the galaxy will understand that the age of galactic empires is over. There's one more thing, said Dr. Wright. The Zephyrians have given us an enormous advantage by announcing their intentions. They think they're being intimidating, but they're actually giving us time to prepare the perfect welcome for them. President Davis stood up. Very well. General Brooks, you have full authority to implement whatever defensive measures you think necessary. Dr. Wright, I want detailed plans for what happens after we defeat their fleet. Director Foster, I need intelligence on every species in the Zephyrian Empire. And Commander Martinez, she added, I want you to prepare a message for Admiral Vexthor. When he arrives at Earth, I want him to understand exactly why humanity was laughing. As the council members filed out of the room, President Davis remained behind, looking at the holographic display of human space. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge, but for the first time since the crisis began, she felt genuinely optimistic about the outcome. Admiral Vexthor stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and looked out at the largest military fleet in Zephyrian history. 53,000 warships filled space around him, stretching beyond the horizon in perfect formation. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Together they represented the absolute military might of an empire that had never known defeat. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced his communications officer. "The fleet awaits your command to enter human space." Vexthor nodded with satisfaction. The humans had been given 6 months to consider their situation and prepare for surrender. Surely they would have realized the futility of resistance by now. No species had ever been foolish enough to fight the Empire when faced with such overwhelming force. "Begin the jump to the human homeworld system," Vexthor commanded. "Today we add another species to the glory of the Empire." The massive fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished from Zephyrian space. Minutes later, they emerged in the Sol system, ready to accept humanity's surrender and begin the process of integration into the Empire. But something was wrong. "Admiral," reported the sensor officer, his voice confused, "I'm not detecting the human homeworld. According to our intelligence, there should be a planet called Earth in the 3rd orbital position. But I'm reading empty space." Vexthor frowned and moved to the sensor station. The display showed the Sol system exactly as their scouts had mapped it months ago, but Earth was simply gone. In its place was empty space. "Check for cloaking devices," Vexthor ordered. "The humans may be hiding their planet." From his hidden command center on what appeared to be empty space where Mars used to be, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Rodriguez watched the Zephyrian fleet on his tactical display. The humans had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, and everything was going exactly according to plan. "All defense platforms report ready," announced his tactical officer. "The solar system grid is fully active," Steve smiled. The Zephyrians were looking for planets to threaten, but humanity had temporarily moved all their worlds out of the system, using massive gravity manipulators. Earth, Mars, and the other inhabited worlds were currently hiding safely behind Jupiter, protected by the giant planet's massive bulk and electromagnetic field. What the aliens had found instead was the most sophisticated military trap ever constructed. "Sir, the alien fleet is conducting system-wide scans," reported his intelligence officer. "They're trying to locate our population centers." "Let them scan," Steve replied. "Signal all units. Begin Phase 1. Across the Sol system, hidden installations that had been disguising themselves as asteroids and space debris suddenly came online. Millions of small objects that the Zephyrians had dismissed as cosmic dust revealed themselves to be hunter-killer drones, each no larger than a football but equipped with advanced AI and quantum disruptors. On the Eternal Glory, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Admiral," shouted the sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The debris field is moving." "Sir, those aren't asteroids. They're weapons platforms." Vexthor stared at his tactical display as it updated with new contacts. What had appeared to be an empty system was revealing itself to be the most heavily fortified space in galactic history. Thousands of hidden installations were powering up, and millions of small craft were swarming toward his fleet. "Impossible," Vexthor whispered. "No species has ever prepared defenses like this." His communications officer suddenly looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the humans." "It's not a surrender offer, sir." Captain Alex Turner's voice filled the Zephyrian flagship's bridge. His tone was calm and professional, but there was an underlying note of barely controlled amusement. "Admiral Vexthor, this is Captain Turner of the Human Defense Force. Welcome to the Sol system. We've prepared a small demonstration to explain why Commander Martinez was laughing when you first met." The main display screen activated, showing a human officer sitting in what appeared to be a military command center. Behind him, other humans worked at complex control panels, managing systems the Zephyrians didn't recognize. "You're probably wondering where our planets went," Turner continued. "Don't worry, they're safe. We moved them temporarily because we didn't want any civilian casualties during your education." "Education?" Vexthor snarled. "Human, you are facing the greatest military force in galactic history. Surrender now or face complete annihilation." Turner smiled. "Admiral, you're not facing the greatest military force in galactic history. You're facing something your empire has never encountered before. You're facing humans who have had 6 months to prepare for your arrival." The human captain gestured to someone off-screen. "We've taken the liberty of scanning your entire fleet during this conversation. We know the specifications of every ship you brought, the personal details of every crew member, and the tactical capabilities of every weapon system you possess. A data packet materialized on every Zephyrian ship simultaneously, containing detailed technical specifications of their own vessels, complete crew rosters, and tactical analysis that should have been impossible for the humans to obtain. "How is this possible?" Vexthor demanded. "Our security systems are impenetrable." "Your security systems are 12,000 years old," Turner replied. "They're designed to stop other Zephyrians, not humans. Admiral, your empire has been fighting the same enemies using the same tactics for millennia. You've never faced an opponent that thinks differently than you do." On the tactical display, the swarm of human drones was approaching the Zephyrian fleet. Each group of drones was coordinating with the others in ways that the alien computers couldn't predict or counter. "Last chance, Admiral," Turner said. "Order your fleet to surrender. Your crews will be treated well. Your ships will be returned undamaged, and you can return to Zephyrian space with a message for your Emperor." "Never," Vexthor roared. "All ships, open fire! Destroy these human parasites!" The Zephyrian fleet unleashed its full firepower. Energy beams that could crack planets lanced out toward the human defensive positions. Missiles capable of destroying moons streaked across space. The sheer volume of destruction was enough to sterilize entire star systems. But the human defenses didn't behave like anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. The hunter-killer drones didn't try to avoid the incoming fire. Instead, they adapted to it. Swarms of drones absorbed the energy weapons and converted the power to fuel their own systems. Defensive platforms that were destroyed were immediately replaced by others that had learned from the failure. "Sir, our weapons aren't having any effect," reported the tactical officer. "The human defenses are adapting faster than we can adjust our targeting." Dr. Michelle Gray, monitoring the battle from the Deep Space Research Station Odyssey, took notes as humanity's newest military technologies performed their first live-fire test. The adaptive defense networks were working even better than the computer models had predicted. "The Zephyrian weapons are actually making our systems stronger," she reported to the command center. "Every attack gives our AI more data about their capabilities." Within minutes of the battle beginning, it was clear that the Zephyrian Empire had made a terrible mistake. Their massive fleet, which had never been defeated, was being systematically dismantled by human defenses that seemed to learn and improve with every passing second. "Admiral," Captain Turner's voice came over the communication system again. "You have 30 seconds to order a ceasefire, or we'll be forced to disable your entire fleet. This is your final warning." Vexthor looked around his bridge at his terrified crew and his failing tactical displays. In 30 minutes of combat, the most powerful military force in galactic history had been reduced to helplessness by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. For the first time in 12,000 years of conquest, a Zephyrian admiral gave the order to surrender. News of the Zephyrian fleet's complete defeat spread across the galaxy in ways the Empire had never experienced before. For 12,000 years, the Empire had controlled all communication between star systems. When they conquered a species, they immediately took over their communication networks and decided what information could be shared. But humanity operated differently. "Commander." Tony Phillips stood in the briefing room of the human strike cruiser Defiant, looking at a holographic map of Zephyrian space. Red dots marked Imperial communication hubs, logistics centers, and administrative worlds. Over the past 3 months, human forces had been visiting these locations, but not to conquer them. "Mission briefing is simple," Tony told his team. "We're not here to destroy the Zephyrian infrastructure. We're here to liberate their information networks. Every species in the Empire deserves to know what really happened at Earth." The team consisted of specialists in electronic warfare, linguistics, and diplomatic contact. Their job was to disable Imperial censorship systems and broadcast the truth about humanity's victory to every world in Zephyrian space. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, their communications expert, had spent weeks learning how Zephyrian networks operated. "Sir, the Empire uses a centralized communication system. Everything goes through Imperial relay stations. If we can take control of just 12 key nodes, we can broadcast to the entire galaxy." "What's our message?" asked Sergeant Mike Davis, the team's security specialist. Tony smiled. "The truth. Complete recordings of the battle at Earth. Technical specifications of our defensive systems, and most importantly, an open invitation to any species that wants to be free of imperial rule. Dr. Rebecca Stone, working with the diplomatic corps from her base on the human colony world New Geneva, was coordinating the largest liberation effort in galactic history. Her job was to make contact with the conquered species within the Empire and offer them something they hadn't seen in centuries: hope. "We're receiving responses from 127 different species so far," Rebecca reported to Earth Command. "Most of them are afraid to believe that the Empire can actually be defeated, but they're listening." The first major breakthrough came from a species called the Cathari, who had been conquered by the Zephyrians over 3,000 years ago. Their homeworld was located near one of the main Imperial communication hubs that Commander Phillips had targeted. "The Cathari have maintained a secret communication network for centuries," Rebecca explained to her team. "When they received our broadcast about the battle at Earth, they started organizing resistance cells across 17 star systems. But the humans weren't just providing information. They were providing practical support." Colonel Danny Hayes coordinated support operations from the human military base on Proxima Station. His job was to supply weapons, technology, and training to any species that wanted to fight for independence. "The beautiful thing about the Empire's structure," Danny explained to his staff, "is that it's completely dependent on fear and overwhelming force. Once you remove those two elements, the whole system falls apart. The weapons that human forces provided to resistance movements weren't the massive planet killers that the Empire relied on. Instead, they were small, smart systems designed to disable Imperial control networks without causing massive casualties." Intelligence Officer Katie Morgan had spent months studying the Empire's administrative structure. What she found was a system that had grown complacent over thousands of years of unchallenged rule. "The Empire assumes that conquered species will stay conquered," Katie reported. "Their security systems are designed to prevent external invasion, not internal rebellion. When subject species start fighting back with human technology, the Imperial forces don't know how to respond." The effect was exactly what humanity had hoped for. Across Zephyrian space, species that had been suppressed for centuries suddenly had access to advanced weapons, secure communications, and most importantly, the knowledge that the supposedly invincible Empire could be defeated. The Veltar rebellion started on their industrial worlds, where workers had been forced to produce ships and weapons for the Empire for over 2 millennia. When they received human manufacturing technology, they stopped building Imperial equipment and started producing their own defense systems. The aquatic Merloth species controlled several important shipping routes that the Empire used to move resources between sectors. When human advisors showed them how to build quantum disruptor mines, Imperial supply lines began breaking down across hundreds of star systems. The most significant uprising came from the Talnori, a highly advanced species that had been conquered early in the Empire's expansion. They had been forced to serve as the Empire's scientists and engineers. When they learned about human technology and philosophy, they realized they had been building the tools of their own oppression. The Talnori uprising is spreading to 47 Imperial research facilities, reported Katie Morgan. "They're not just fighting back. They're systematically destroying centuries of Imperial technological research and replacing it with human designs." Admiral Vexthor, now a prisoner aboard a human facility, watched reports of the rebellions with growing despair. From his cell, he could see the tactical displays that showed the collapse of Imperial authority across the galaxy. "How is this possible?" he asked Dr. Rebecca Stone during one of her visits. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. The Empire has ruled for 12,000 years. Rebecca sat down across from the fallen admiral. "That's exactly the problem, Admiral. Your Empire ruled through fear and force for so long that you forgot why civilizations exist in the first place." "Civilizations exist to impose order on chaos," Vexthor replied, repeating Imperial doctrine. "No," Rebecca said gently. "Civilizations exist to help individuals and species reach their full potential. Your Empire suppressed that potential for thousands of years. When we showed your subject species what they could become if they were free, they chose freedom." The reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. Species after species was declaring independence from the Empire. Imperial fleets that tried to suppress the rebellions found themselves facing enemies equipped with human technology and trained in human tactics, but the humans weren't trying to replace the Zephyrian Empire with a human empire. Instead, they were helping each liberated species develop its own government, its own technology, and its own defense forces. "We're not conquerors," explained General Kevin Brooks during a video conference with resistance leaders from 50 different worlds. "We're partners. Each of your species has unique strengths and capabilities. Our goal is to help you develop those strengths, not to control you." The concept was so alien to the galactic mindset that many species initially didn't believe it. They assumed that humanity was simply a more sophisticated version of the Zephyrian Empire, offering temporary freedom before imposing their own control. But as months passed and human forces continued to provide support without demanding tribute or submission, the truth became clear. Humanity genuinely wanted to create a galaxy where different species could cooperate as equals, rather than exist in a hierarchy of conqueror and conquered. 6 months after the battle at Earth, the Zephyrian Empire controlled less than 10% of its former territory. Imperial fleets were surrendering without fighting. Imperial governors were abandoning their posts. The administrative structure that had dominated the galaxy for 12 millennia was simply dissolving. Emperor Zekthar himself, ruler of the Empire from his throne world at the galactic core, finally broke his silence. His message, broadcast on emergency frequencies to the few Imperial worlds still under his control, was brief and bitter. "The age of the Empire is ending. The humans have not conquered us through superior force. They have destroyed us through superior ideas. May the galaxy remember what we built, even as it chooses to build something different." Commander Phillips, monitoring the Emperor's broadcast from the bridge of the Defiant, turned to his communications officer. "Send a reply to the Emperor. Tell him that the galaxy will remember the Empire. It will remember it as an example of what happens when civilizations choose control over cooperation. The Zephyrian Empire was ending not with a great battle, but with a great awakening." Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten what freedom meant were discovering that they had never really lost it. They had simply been waiting for someone to remind them that there was a better way to live. 1 year after the defeat of the Zephyrian fleet at Earth, Admiral Jake Martinez stood on the observation deck of the human diplomatic vessel, New Horizon. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the most remarkable sight in galactic history. Representatives from over 400 different species gathering for the first Galactic Cooperation Council. The meeting was taking place in neutral space, on a massive station that had been built jointly by 12 different species, using human organizational methods and alien technologies. The station itself was a symbol of what the galaxy could accomplish when different civilizations worked together, instead of trying to dominate each other. "Admiral, the final delegation has arrived," announced his aide, Lieutenant Commander Beth Wilson. "The Zephyrian representatives are requesting permission to board." Jake nodded. "Send them to Conference Room 7. I'll meet them there personally." The Zephyrian delegation was led by Admiral Vexthor, who had requested to serve as a representative of what remained of his people. The former Imperial Admiral looked very different from the proud warrior who had threatened humanity a year ago. His elaborate armor had been replaced with simple civilian clothing. His arrogant confidence had been replaced with something Jake recognized as genuine humility. "Admiral Martinez," Vexthor said, offering a formal bow. "I thank you for allowing my people to participate in these proceedings." "Admiral Vexthor," Jake replied, returning the bow. "Everyone deserves a voice in building the future. That includes the Zephyrians." They walked together through the station's corridors, passing representatives from dozens of different species. Jake noticed that many of the aliens stopped to watch the two former enemies walking side by side. The sight of a human admiral and a Zephyrian admiral in friendly conversation had become a powerful symbol of the galaxy's transformation. "I have a question that has troubled me for months," Vexthor said as they walked. "When your commander Martinez first encountered my fleet, why did he laugh? At the time I thought he was mad or foolish. Now I understand that your response was calculated, but I still don't understand the laughter." Jake smiled. "Martinez laughed because your threat was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. You assumed that fear would make us submit. But humans have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. When you threatened us, you weren't demonstrating your power. You were showing us exactly how to defeat you." They entered Conference Room 7, where Dr. Sandra Clark was waiting with the preliminary documents for the Galactic Cooperation Accords. As head of the new council, Sandra had spent months working with representatives from hundreds of species to create a framework for interstellar cooperation. The basic principles are simple, Sandra explained to Vexthor. No species has the right to conquer or control another species. All civilizations have the right to self-determination. Conflicts between species will be resolved through negotiation and arbitration, not warfare. And all species will contribute to and benefit from shared scientific and cultural advancement. Vexthor studied the documents carefully. These principles would have seemed impossible under the Empire. How do you ensure that stronger species don't simply dominate weaker ones? By changing the definition of strength, Sandra replied. Under the Empire, strength meant military power. Under the new system, strength means the ability to contribute to the common good. A species that develops new medical technology is just as valuable as one that builds defensive systems. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. All delegates, please report to the main assembly hall. The opening ceremony is beginning. The main assembly hall was enormous, with seating for representatives from over 400 species. The diversity was breathtaking. There were the tall, graceful Veltar with their crystalline skin, the aquatic Murloth in their environmental suits, the tiny but brilliant Kexani, who communicated through complex light patterns, and dozens of other species that had never been allowed to interact freely under Imperial rule. Captain Emma Lewis, now commanding the exploration vessel UES New Horizon, delivered the opening address. She had been chosen to speak because her ship represented humanity's commitment to continued exploration and discovery rather than conquest. 1 year ago, humanity encountered the Zephyrian Empire, Emma began, her words being translated into hundreds of different languages simultaneously. We could have responded with fear or hatred. Instead, we chose to respond with an idea, that the galaxy would be better served by cooperation than by conquest. The audience listened in complete silence. Many of the delegates had never heard a speech that wasn't either a threat or a demand for submission. Today we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. Each species here has unique gifts to offer the galaxy. The Telnori have advanced our understanding of quantum physics. The Cathari have shared agricultural techniques that could feed billions. The Murloth have taught us new methods of interstellar navigation. Emma gestured toward the Zephyrian delegation. Even our former enemies have valuable contributions to make. The Zephyrians' organizational skills and historical knowledge will help us avoid the mistakes of the past. The ceremony continued with presentations from different species about their contributions to the new galactic community. The variety was amazing. The insectoid Hivik had developed new forms of biotechnology. The energy-based Lumari had created revolutionary power systems. The plant-like Verdani had advanced ecological restoration techniques. But the most important presentation came from Professor Jack Newman, a human teacher who had been working with young people from different species. His students included young Zephyrians, former Imperial subjects, and humans, all learning together. The future of the galaxy isn't in the hands of governments or military forces, Professor Newman said. It's in the hands of the young people who are growing up in a galaxy where cooperation is normal and conquest is just a historical curiosity. One of his students, a young Zephyrian named Velkara, stepped forward to address the assembly. My grandfather was an Imperial admiral. My father was an Imperial governor. They both believed that strength came from making others afraid of you. But I've learned something different from my human teachers and my alien friends. Real strength comes from helping others become stronger than they ever thought possible. The applause that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. Representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom had been enemies for thousands of years, were showing their approval for a young Zephyrian who represented everything the old empire had tried to prevent. After the ceremony, Jake found himself in a private meeting with the other senior leaders of the new galactic community. Dr. Sandra Clark was there, along with General Kevin Brooks, Dr. Rebecca Stone, and several alien representatives who had become key figures in the liberation movement. We've accomplished something remarkable, Sandra said, looking at the reports from across the galaxy. Interstellar trade is up 400%. Scientific collaboration has led to breakthroughs that no single species could have achieved alone. Armed conflict between species has dropped to nearly zero. But we can't become complacent, warned General Brooks. There are still some Imperial holdouts in the Outer Rim, and we're starting to receive reports about other hostile civilizations beyond our current borders. Dr. Rebecca Stone nodded. The galaxy is a big place. The Zephyrian Empire only controlled about 15% of it. There are probably other empires out there, and they'll have heard about what happened to the Zephyrians. Jake looked out the window at the diverse fleet of ships surrounding the station. Human vessels worked alongside former Imperial ships, resistance fighters, and exploration craft from dozens of species. Let them come, he said quietly. When they arrive, they'll find something that's never existed before in galactic history. They'll find a civilization that's stronger because it's free, more advanced because it's cooperative, and more determined because it's defending something worth defending. Admiral Vexthor, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. Admiral Martinez, I believe I finally understand why Commander Martinez was laughing. He wasn't laughing at the Empire's power. He was laughing because he knew that power built on fear and conquest is ultimately fragile. When it encounters something built on cooperation and mutual respect, it simply falls apart. That's exactly right, Jake replied. The Empire lasted 12,000 years because no one had ever shown your subjects a better way to live. Once they saw what freedom looked like, the choice was obvious. As the day ended and the various delegations prepared to return to their home systems, Jake remained on the observation deck watching the ships depart. Each vessel carried representatives who would return home with new technologies, new ideas, and new hope for the future. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from humanity, that true strength didn't come from ruling others, but from helping them rule themselves. And as the New Horizon prepared for its next mission to explore the unknown regions beyond the former Imperial borders, Jake knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, the galaxy would face them together. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic cooperation